Hello, welcome to La Excellence. In our recap program, we are discussing monthly current affairs videos. In this video, let us discuss February 2021's issues. This is part 2 of it. PDF of this video is available in the description. If you want to write test series based on monthly current affairs video, link is available in the description. Check it once. Let us start with economy related current affairs. Our first issue is Budget 2021. I hope you have already read about Budget 2021 and its provisions. In this, let us understand briefly what is budget, what are the components of budget, what are the documents that are submitted as part of the budget. Let us try to understand. We have to revise and recollect budgetary provisions, important provisions of Budget 2021. Wherever necessary, we are going to add them as separate components. Now, budget is called as annual financial statement under Article 112, and it has two components. One is budgetary receipts, two budgetary expenditure. Again, receipts are divided into revenue and capital receipts. Budgetary expenditure is also divided into revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. When expenditure is more than receipts, we call it as deficit situation. Try to recollect types of deficits. See, when you read current affairs, you should try to recollect all your static topics. Let's say this is related to your fiscal policy. Try to recollect budget and related terminology. Now, let us understand what budget contains. When finance minister introduces budget, it means she introduces estimates of revenue and capital receipts, ways and means to raise the revenue, estimates of expenditure, details of actual receipts and expenditure of the last financial year, and economic and financial policy of the coming year. These are part of budget. Budget 2021. What are the components that are introduced? Let's say infrastructure. Likewise, try to recollect. If you don't have the material for this, go through PIB, gist of Budget 2021, read that particular document. It's very important. Our next issue is Reliance Futures deal and Amazon's contestation of this deal. What has happened? Reliance and Futures, they have made a deal. Futures, this company has sold its assets to Reliance. Amazon invested certain percentage in Futures Group. Now the conflict is Amazon says that as Reliance is our competitor, you are selling the assets to Reliance. That means my investment in your company is not valuable for me now. If you want to sell your assets, we have the first right of offer. So why didn't you offer that? That is the issue now. Future said that we didn't sell our business to Reliance. We just sold the assets to Reliance. That is the deal. So in this context, Amazon went to Competition Commission of India. Competition Commission of India said there's no anti-competitive practice in this deal. Then Amazon went to Singapore International Arbitration. Singapore International Arbitration has said that this deal is against the fair practice of competition. Based on this Singapore's arbitration's verdict, Supreme Court has kept this particular deal temporarily at abeyance for some time. So this deal is essentially regarding whether this is anti-competitive or not. That is the issue. And Amazon claims that it contractually Futures Group is obligated to inform Amazon about the deal, but Futures Group did not. That is the violation of the deal. So that is how they went to the court. Next issue is Washington Consensus. Washington Consensus as a word, it supports free market economy, free trade, free market economy, free floating exchange rate, etc. World Bank, IMF, these institutions, they promote these principles. In this context, what are the implications of Washington Consensus? Free trade agreements through WTO, NAFTA, for reducing the tariff barriers. These were under this Washington Consensus. IMF bailouts and conditional market reforms. This was also brought in under Washington Consensus. Belief in free trade, it suggests that every country should specialize in certain goods and services, and based on the comparative advantage they sell and buy. This is also one of the fundamental principles under Washington Consensus. Why this is in use now? It is because Washington Consensus and its spirit is under threat because of the protectionism by many of the European countries, USA, etc. Earlier, in the last year, you might have seen protectionistic policies were followed by many countries. In that context, this was in news. Next issue is privatization of Vizag Steel Plant. Recently, Union Cabinet has approved the privatization of Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, that is Vizag Steel Plant. Privatization means government selling its shares to the private sector, that is known as privatization. There is one more term known as disinvestment. Government selling its stake in not fully but partially is known as disinvestment. Disinvestment is of two types. One is strategic disinvestment, second one is minority sale. Minority sale means government sells less than 51% of share in PSU to the private sector. Strategic disinvestment means government sells more than 51% of its share to the private sector. That is known as strategic sale. Now, what are the advantages of public sector units? Why do we need PSUs now? We implemented LPG reforms, and that why can't we completely sell off the public sector enterprises? Because they have certain advantages. What are they? They generate income, they provide for capital formation, they also promote employment, infrastructure, they provide industrial base. So these are some of the advantages of PSUs. That is why we still hold, the government still hold its a share in PSUs. Next issue is retail direct. Recently, RBI has announced RBI Retail Direct Scheme. In February 2021, RBI said that generally in government securities, G securities means on behalf of central government, RBI issues certain bonds which are known as government securities. In these G securities, these are also known as gilt bonds, gilt-edged bonds or gilt bonds because they have sovereign guarantee. So in these bonds, generally the institutions they buy on a large scale 5 crores, more than 5 crore rupees. But retail investors, let's say if I want to invest 30,000 rupees in government securities, earlier that option was not there. Now, retail direct scheme, this allows the retailers to open accounts with RBI to purchase G securities, government securities. Further, there's an online portal in which we can register and we can directly access the primary issuance of G securities. It's this one we have NDSOM, negotiated dealing system, order matching system. Under that, retail investors they can register. This is an electronic screen based anonymous platform for G securities trading. Next issue is legalization of MSP. MSP means minimum support price. Government, when it procures from the farmers, it pays certain price, minimum price, that is known as MSP, minimum support price. Recently, after passing the agricultural bills in the parliament, farmers started protesting. There are two major demands of farmer protests. One is to repeal the three agricultural reform laws that are passed by the parliament. Two, to provide legal guarantee for MSP. In this context, MSP calculates first one input cost, second one family labor. On top of this, 50% extra input and family labor. On top of that, 50% extra, that means 150 percentage. So this input cost on that 50 percentage extra, this will be paid as minimum support price. Now the issue is minimum support price is paid only for 23 crops, and minimum support price is paid by the government only when it procures for its purpose, for PDS or buffer stock. And it is not mandatory for the government to issue MSP during every year during Rabi and Kharif seasons. Generally it issues, but it is not mandatory because it is not mentioned in any statute, any law. That is why farmers are requesting to add it as to bring MSP through a law. But what happens? MSP is the minimum guarantee, it's not the maximum price. Farmers can get more market price, but if it is legalizes, everyone who buys that product, they'll try to buy it at that rate only. That will be negative for the farmers. That is the government's stand. Now, MSP is calculated by Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices. It recommends it And Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, it decides the final prices. CACP is an attached office of Ministry of Agriculture. Under MSP, 7 cereal crops, 5 pulses, 7 oil seeds, and 4 commercial crops are covered. Next issue is NSE co-location case. SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, which is the capital market regulator, it has imposed penalty on National Stock Exchange and on the chairman and director and vice chairman of National Stock Exchange in connection with the co-location case. Co-location means NSE provides infrastructure. Stockbrokers they can use the servers of the NSE itself and they can pay certain additional fees. But these servers they have faster, they transmit the information faster. So let's say someone is located in Hyderabad, someone is located in Mumbai's NSE. So the person who is located in Mumbai's NSE is getting to know the information few seconds prior to the person who is located in Hyderabad. That changes the dynamic. That is why in co-location case, NSE is seen as the accused. That is why SEBI has imposed fine. And there are two more words that are mentioned related to this topic. One is dark fiber. Second one is front running. Dark fiber means it is a dedicated communication line through which messages travel faster than the regular lines because of the absence of other traffic. Such lines are known as dark fiber. As NSE has a dark fiber line, those stockbrokers who are located in the NSE, they have faster access. That can be seen as a violation of equal and free information to everyone. Front running means when a broker or any other entity enters into trade because they have foreknowledge of non-publicized transaction, then they have the advantage. That is known as front running. Front running is known as tailgating. Front running is illegal and unethical. It takes advantage of private information which is not available to the public. They use it for the profit, which is unethical and illegal. So in NSE co-location case, they have imposed a fine on NSE for this. They did not, for front running has happened there, that is why. Next issue is off-budget borrowing. Off-budget borrowing means in budget, government mentions the expenditure and revenues of that particular financial year. But if the expenses are more than the revenue, then government has to borrow it. As government borrows more, deficit keeps on increasing. So instead of budgetary borrowings, what if the government borrows through other public sector enterprises? That essentially is the government's borrowing, but it is not shown in the budget. Such borrowings are known as off-budget borrowing. What is the use of it anyway? It comes under government debt only. What is the use of off-budget borrowing? It is not calculated under fiscal deficit. So, and as the fiscal deficit is less, ratings etc. would be high, and government has more levy to borrow more under budgetary borrowings. That is why off-budget borrowings are done. Next issue is PLI for telecom, pharma and IT hardware. PLI means production linked incentive. Let's say if a company produces one metric ton of goods in one financial year, next year if it produces more, on the increase in the production, government provides certain incentive. Such a scheme is known as PLI, production linked incentive. It is to encourage domestic manufacturing. It is to create economies of scale. It is to make India as part of global supply chain. It is to attract investments in India, and it is to promote competitiveness in the export market. For that, government brought in PLI scheme, and this scheme is applicable to 13 sectors. And cabinet approved these 3 sectors, telecom, pharma and IT, in February 2021. That's why this was in news. These are the points related to pharma, IT and electronics. Please go through it once. Next issue is fugitive economic offender. Recently, London court has granted extradition request of Nirav Modi, businessman Nirav Modi, who is declared as fugitive economic offender in India. How do we define a fugitive economic offender? Under a Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018, a person against whom arrest warrant is issued by the special court and who has committed at least 100 crores and above financial crime is declared as fugitive economic offender, and this person offender leaves the country to avoid facing the criminal proceedings. In this context, a special court can order for confiscation of property of the individual. Some of the offences listed under Fugitive Economic Offenders Act include counterfeiting government stamps and currency, check dishonor, money laundering, and transaction defaulting of creditors. These are some of the offences listed under Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. Vijay Mallya is the first Indian to be declared as fugitive economic offender under this particular act. After that, Nirav Modi and few others are declared as FEOs. The essential condition is the person is not willing to come back to India to face the criminal charge. 2. The crime must be of more than 100 crores. Next issue is conclusive land titling. Niti Aayog has proposed model bill on conclusive land titling, and it has sent this bill to various states. Why? Land is in the state list. That's why it has sent the bill to many states, and states have failed to send their response on this particular bill. What is conclusive land titling, by the way? Conclusive land titling means, as of now, land and property, these are recorded as the provisional owner. The person is recorded as the provisional owner. This particular bill provides for conclusive titles in the place of presumptive titles. What happens because of this? It reduces the land related litigations. It promotes easy access to credit for the farmers, and it makes the land acquisition easier. Real estate transactions become more transparent. Title holders would be eligible for compensation from the government, and in this way, digital land records are maintained, and it promotes for unified framework. In many states, various acts are there to promote land reforms, but this particular draft model bill, it promotes the uniformity and unified legal framework. That is why Niti Aayog has sent this model bill to various states. Next issue is review of flexible inflation targeting. In the year 2015, government and RBI, they both have agreed for FIT, that is flexible inflation targeting. And RBI adopted flexible inflation targeting in the year 2016. What is this flexible inflation targeting? One of the primary objectives of monetary policy is to maintain the price stability. That means inflation targeting. This inflation targeting was rigid earlier. Now government wants to have a flexible targets. That means a range should be there. It should not be a number, it should be a range. That's why it has decided that 4 plus or minus 2% on CPI scale is the ideal headline inflation. So this range is proposed. And to make the changes to this, RBI Act was amended. Statutory basis was provided to this FIT, that is flexible inflation targeting. Now what RBI did is, when they adopted this FIT framework, they agreed that for every 5 years this FIT framework will be reviewed. So in that context, RBI has appointed a committee to review this. That committee has said that earlier FIT framework, which RBI and government has agreed in 2005, holds good for now for the next 5 years also. So the targets and methodologies were not changed. This is about review of flexible inflation targeting. The committee that recommended this flexible inflation targeting in the year 2015 is Urjit Patel Committee. This committee has recommended for flexible inflation targeting in the year 2015. Next issue is anti-dumping duty. What is the meaning of dumping? Dumping means, let's say country A is selling goods to country B. Country A, if it sells the goods in country B at lower cost than it sells in its own country, then such practice is known as dumping. This is an unfair trade practice. It is to distort the effective international trade. Against such practices, countries can impose anti-dumping duties. These anti-dumping duties, they have they have provisions under WTO. WTO generally says that tariffs needs to be reduced. This kind of unfair trade practices needs to be addressed. Under that, anti-dumping duty can be imposed by the national countries to protect the domestic industry. It can be imposed for 5 years. After that, it can be extended. Anti-dumping duty. Similarly, we have countervailing duty. Countervailing duty is against the products from a specific country. It is specially to protect the domestic industry. Anti-dumping duty is to remove the unfair practices. Countervailing duties are against the specific country, against the subsidized imports from that country. Next issue is accredited investor. That means SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India, is going to allow differential products for a set of investors who are known as accredited investors. These are the investors who have the pre-knowledge regarding the stock exchanges, stock markets, and their investment capacities, and the knowledge access is more. Such investors are declared as accredited investors. This accredited investor concept, this promotes flexibility in minimum investment amount. This also promotes flexibility and relaxation in the regulatory requirements. This promotes access to products and services offered exclusively for the accredited investors. Accredited investors are also known as qualified investors or professional investors. These investors, they know they have the prior information, so that's why they can make the informed decisions. Next issue is Draft Blue Economy Policy 2020. Recently, our Ministry of Earth Sciences has rolled out Draft Blue Economy Policy and it has invited suggestions. What is blue economy? Blue economy means economic activity that is dependent upon maritime activities. Water related activities are called as blue economy activities. Under this blue economy policy, national accounting framework for blue economy and ocean governance would be brought in. Coastal marine spatial planning and tourism would be promoted. Marine fisheries, aquaculture, and fish processing is one of the focus areas. Manufacturing, emerging industries, trade, technology, these will be focusing on blue economy. Logistics, infrastructure, shipping, including transshipments, would be improvised. Coastal, deep sea mining, and offshore energy projects will be promoted. Security, strategic dimensions, and international engagement is also a part of blue economy concept. Blue economy as a concept is introduced in the year 2010 in a book known as Blue Economy 10 Years, 100 Inventions, 100 Million Jobs. Sustainable use of blue economy and the resources that promotes the use of ocean resources, and it also promotes the development strategies for higher productivity and conservation of ocean health. Next issue is Banking Ombudsman. RBI has announced to promote the Unified Integrated Banking Ombudsman scheme under One Nation, One Ombudsman to improvise the grievance redressal mechanism with regard to banking and related sectors. As of now, 3 separate ombudsmen are there for banks, non-financial banking companies, non-bank prepaid payment issuers. For the three different ombudsman systems are there. Now, banking ombudsman is quasi-judicial body. It promotes alternative dispute redressal mechanism between the customer and the bank. RBI has set up ombudsman system 1995 under section 35A of RBI Act 1949. In 2016, RBI has revised the guidelines. Now, for the grievance redressal, these 3 are integrated into single integrated ombudsman. First, we can go and file a case with bank. If it is unable to give us a satisfactory explanation, if it is unable to resolve our issue, then we can go for banking ombudsman. But first, we have to go for the service provider. Next issue is Agricultural Infrastructural Fund, AIF. It's a central sector scheme, that means 100% fully funded by the central government. under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare. This scheme will be operational from 2022 to 2029. The beneficiaries under Agricultural Infrastructural Fund scheme include farmers, primary agricultural credit societies, farmer producer organizations, agripreneurs, startups, center and state agencies, local body sponsored public private sector partnership projects, etc. These are the beneficiaries. This agricultural investment fund, it provides medium to long term debt financing facility through interest subvention. That means they won't provide money for free for the infrastructure. They provide this allows the individuals and other institutions, as we have mentioned, to take loans from the banks on the investment that these institutions and individuals pay. Under this scheme, interest subvention will be provided for post harvest management practices like supply chain services, such as building marketing platforms, warehouses, silos, etc. For these projects, Agricultural Infrastructural Fund will provide the interest subvention. Community farming assets like organic input production, infrastructure for smart and precision agriculture. For these also, Agricultural Infrastructure Fund provides the interest subvention. Next issue is one-person companies. In the recent budget speech, our finance minister has said that government is going to ease the norms related for one-person companies. One-person company is formed just by one single person as a shareholder. As of now, private companies require minimum two individuals as shareholders. Now, single person companies are allowed under Companies Act. This promotes the individual ownership, and this is under Ministry of Corporate Affairs. The new rules have reduced the residency limit for the one person companies. Earlier it was 182 days, now it's only 120 days. This amendment allows the non resident Indians to corporate one person companies in India so as to attract more investment. Next issue is Kisan Credit Card Scheme. Kisan Credit Card Scheme initially was for agricultural farmers only. Later it was extended for dairy and livestock farmers and to the fishermen also. In this context, recently, Kisan Credit Card Scheme and its reach is less, especially to the dairy and livestock farmers. That's why it was in news. Kisan Credit Card Scheme, this was introduced in 1998 to provide for adequate and timely credit support for the farmers through single window system. This scheme was extended to, in 2018, this scheme was extended to fisheries and livestock and dairy farmers also. This Kisan Credit Card Scheme, it covers post-harvest expenses, produce marketing loan, consumption requirements, important consumption requirements, working capital and maintenance of farm assets, etc. Kisan Credit Card Scheme is implemented by commercial banks, both private and public, RRBs, small finance banks and cooperative banks. Important. This one is important. Next issue is Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020. Recently, Niti Aayog has constituted a subgroup to prepare a national action plan for migrant workers. This particular code, it has subsumed many acts related to unorganized sector and migrant workmen for safety, health and working conditions. It provides for decent working conditions, grievance redressal mechanism, minimum wages, protection from abuse and exploitation. Under this particular code, enhancement of skills, social security to all categories of organized and unorganized workers, including migrant workers, is proposed. Relevant provisions of this code are applicable to every establishment in which 10 or more interstate migrant workers are employed as of now or 12 months prior to this date. So for all of them, this particular code applies. As of now, operational guidelines are not issued for this code. Next issue is per drop more crop. Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare is implementing a centrally sponsored program known as Per Drop More Crop. This is part of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, which was launched in 2015 and 16. This per drop more crop, it focuses on enhancing water use efficiency at the farm level through micro irrigation, and it also promotes water conservation through watershed development programs, etc. And it provides impetus for micro irrigation in the country. Micro irrigation fund with 5000 crore rupees was created with NABARD in the year 2018 and 19. Government provides 3% interest subvention to the loans using this micro irrigation fund. If they want to implement per drop more crop under that micro irrigation programs, state can borrow more money, under which interest subvention is provided by the center using this micro irrigation fund. Next issue is Pradhana Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshana Abhiyan PM Asha. It's an umbrella scheme to ensure MSP is reached to the farmers. It comprises three components. One is price support scheme, second one price deficiency payment scheme, third one private procurement and stock listing scheme. Under PM Asha, states and union territories, these are asked to either choose PSS or PDPS, price deficiency and payment scheme. Pulses, Copra, these are procured under PSS. Only one scheme can be chosen, not both. Only one can be chosen by any of it. This helps the farmers to reach the MSP. This helps farmers to access MSP. As the protests are there with regard to MSP, such schemes they need to be extended further. Next issue is scheme of fund for regeneration of traditional industries, not registration. Regeneration of traditional industries, which is known as SFURTI. The 50 artisan based clusters were inaugurated in 18 states under Scheme of Fund for Regeneration of Traditional Industries. There are many traditional industries which are losing their competitiveness at the scale of large scale industries. In this context, Ministry of MSMEs, it is implementing this fund to promote the traditional industries, especially artisans, etc. Under this scheme, Ministry supports various interventions including common facilities, setting up common facility centers, procurement of new machinery, creating raw material banks, design interventions, improved packaging facilities, improvement in marketing infrastructure, improvising the skills and capacity development of the people to promote their traditional industries. This is the scheme of fund for regeneration of traditional industries. It is implemented by Ministry of MSMEs. Next issue is Asset Reconstruction Company. Under Union Budget 2021-22, government has proposed for bad bank or government asset reconstruction company. That means if NPAs are there for a bank, NPAs needs to be resolved as quickly as possible. For that particular purpose, specialized agencies such as bad banks are appointed. They take the loan, that is NPA loan from the bank, they resolve it, they sell the assets if needed, and they pay back the money to the bank, and they charge certain percentage of money as a commission. Such institutions are known as bad banks and asset reconstruction companies. They are for consolidating and resolving the bad loans. Under SARFAESI Act, Securitization and Reconstruction of Financial Assets and Enforcement of Security Interest Act. Under SARFAESI Acts, NPAs are resolved. These are restructured and resolved. ARCs are appointed under SARFAESI Act. This is important. Asset reconstruction companies are appointed under which one? They are appointed under SARFAESI Act. Next issue is 15th Finance Commission and its report. Recently, 15th Finance Commission has submitted its report. Already we have discussed about formula of 15th Finance Commission. Now, let us discuss few more issues. Earlier, it has released interim report. Now, it has submitted the final report for the period 2021 to 2026. With regard to vertical devolution, it has recommended for transfer of 41% of money from the net divisible pool of taxes from the center to the states, 41%. Earlier, during 14th Finance Commission, it was 42%. Now, why 41%? Because Jammu and Kashmir is declared as now two union territories. That is why. And with regard to vertical devolution, cess is not devolved from center to states. Remember, Cess is additional tax. Cess and surcharges are additional taxes. These are not devolved to the states. That means they won't come under a divisible pool of taxes. With regard to fiscal management and consolidation, this Finance Commission has recommended for bringing the fiscal deficit to 4% of GDP by 2025-26. With regard to health, it has recommended for increase in the spending on health to more than 8% of the budgeted amount, and it has recommended to spend two-thirds of health expenditure on the primary health care. Other than these, 15th Finance Commission has suggested to simplify the GST mechanism. It has suggested to have performance-linked incentive through Millennium Cities Fund, and it has also recommended to have Defense Modernization and Internal Security Fund. Please go through 15th Finance Commission in little more detail. Now, let us discuss international relations related concepts. Next issue is coup in Myanmar. Myanmar, which is also known as Burma, it's a Southeast Asian and East Asian country. It neighbors Thailand, Laos, Bangladesh, China, and India. It has population of about 54 million. Most of them are Burmese-speaking population. Its capital is Naypyidaw. Major religion is Buddhism. Many ethnic groups are there, including Rohingya Muslims. It got independence in the year 1948. First coup in Myanmar has happened in the year 1962, and this is the latest one. Please go through this timeline if possible. They are not going to ask about this timeline in the exam, but coup in Myanmar, what has happened there, that can be a question in our geography. So that's why these points are important. Next issue is East Container Terminal. Recently, Sri Lankan government has cancelled East Container Terminal project under trilateral agreement. India, Japan, and Sri Lanka, they made a trilateral agreement to jointly develop East Container Terminal in Colombo Port. This East Container Terminal is near to Colombo International Financial Center. Now, India says that we have made an agreement, now you are cancelling it. Sri Lanka says that our labor unions and others are protesting against it. That is why we don't have the choice. We are scrapping this particular agreement, but we are providing alternative agreement. You can develop the West Container Terminal. India and Japan, along with Sri Lanka, can develop West Container Terminal. This project is been newly assigned in the place of East Container Terminal. East Container Terminal project was assigned as a tripartite agreement signed between India, Sri Lanka, and Japan. It proposes to develop East Container Terminal and towards the southern part of Colombo Port. East Container Terminal is located 3 kilometers away from China-backed international financial city known as Colombo Port City. And India, Chinese companies, they have control over Hambantota Port. And this is part of China's One Belt, One Road initiative. Next issue is right to passage under UNCLOS. UNCLOS means United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. It is also known as Law of Sea. It divides the maritime areas into 5 major zones. 1 is internal waters, 2 is territorial sea, 3 is contiguous zone, 4 is exclusive economic zone, 5th one is high seas. Under UNCLOS convention, it provides framework for the state jurisdiction. What is the jurisdiction of each country and what is the legal status of each area? That is decided under UNCLOS. India is member of UNCLOS treaty. Recently, USA said that we can go through exclusive economic zone of a country without the permission. But many countries, including India, they allow the right to passage, but they ask the countries to take the prior permission from, let's say, India to move through India's exclusive zone. But USA says no, because we have right to passage. USA did not sign UNCLOS treaty. Next issue is IAEA and its role. IAEA is in news because of Iran's nuclear agreement. USA said it is rejoining the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. In this context, IAEA has recently said that Iran has increased the nuclear enrichment in the last 1 year because of USA's unilateral moving out of JCPOA. Then, what are the functions of IAEA? Let us understand. It's an international center for cooperation in the field of nuclear and atomic, and it is a UN specialized agency. It works with member countries and it has many partners with regard to nuclear technologies. IAEA, it assesses the research in the nuclear technologies, it establishes the safety standards, and it establishes the R&D facilities, and it implements the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and it also implements the comprehensive safeguards on with regard to non-nuclear weapon states. IAEA, its theme is Atoms for Peace and Development. IAEA is UN specialized agency and it conducts regular inspections in the nuclear facilities, only civil nuclear facilities, not for military facilities. It inspects the civil nuclear facilities. We are not part of NPT, which is implemented under IAEA. Next issue is nuclear non-proliferation. Just now we said that India is not part of NPT. Yes, Non-Proliferation Treaty. NPT is a multilateral treaty. It aims at limiting the spread of nuclear weapons using three components: 1. Non-proliferation, 2. Disarmament, 3. Peaceful use of nuclear energy. Under this NPT, countries are divided into two. One is states without nuclear weapons, 2. States with nuclear weapons. Those countries which don't have the nuclear weapons, they should not develop the nuclear weapons. Those who have the nuclear weapons, they can slowly reduce, they can go for disarmament. All states can have the access to nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. That's why non-nuclear weapon countries, they can get the nuclear technology from the nuclear technology countries, but they should promise that they're not going to develop the nuclear weapons. India did not sign NPT because India says it is against the equality. Those countries who have the nuclear weapons, they continue to have them. But those who don't have, this treaty prohibits them to develop. This is against the equality principle. That's why India did not sign this. This treaty defines nuclear weapon states as those that had manufactured and detonated nuclear explosive devices prior to 1967. All the other states, therefore, are considered non-nuclear weapon states. Only 5 nuclear weapon states are recognized under this treaty. They are China, France, Russia, USA, and UK. Others are non-nuclear weapon states. But along with these 5, 4 more countries they have nuclear weapons. They are India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel. We 4 countries have nuclear weapons, but NPT recognizes only these 5 countries. This is the map that shows the non-proliferation treaty map. 5 countries, nuclear weapon countries, others non-nuclear. This is Israel, and this one is North Korea, India, Pakistan. Next issue is, recently UK has announced to apply to join in the Joint Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. Last year, TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, was renamed as Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. Earlier, 12 countries were part of this this trade deal, but USA under Trump has moved out of the trade negotiations. That's why as of now, only 11 countries are part of it. They changed the name as Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. And USA has withdrawn from it. Now UK wants to join in it, though this country doesn't have any direct boundary with the Pacific Ocean. Next issue is India, Mauritius. They have signed Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Very important because Mauritius is the first African country with which India has signed this Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Under this agreement, it covers trade in goods, rules of origin, trade in services, technical barriers, sanitary, phytosanitary measures, dispute settlement, movement of natural persons. These are all the issues that are covered under Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. This agreement between India and Mauritius, this covers various exports items between India and Mauritius. This Mauritius is one of the preferential market countries for India. Bilateral trade between two countries stands at $690 billion. This is Indian Ocean country. With regard to foreign direct investment, Mauritius is in the top 10 sources of FDI. First country is Mauritius. First highest FDI comes from Mauritius, then from Singapore, then from Cayman Islands. These all countries are small countries. FDI is rerouted through them. It's not that they are super rich and they are investing in India. It's that many companies, they just open the office in these countries because of less taxation and less stringent rules in these countries. They route the fund through these countries. That's why more FDI from these countries. Next issue is 5S vision. India has assumed UNSC non-permanent membership for the 8th time in UNSC. In that context, India has said that it is going to follow 5S approach: Samman, Samvad, Sahyog, Shanti and Samriddhi. These are 5 principles which we are going to follow. United Nations Security Council is one of the fundamental components, 6 main organs of UN. It has 15 member countries, 5 permanent and 10 non-permanent. 5 permanent countries include China, France, Russia, UK and US. Non-permanent members, 10 non-permanent members, they have tenure of 2 years. India is elected as a non-permanent country for the 8th time. And India is asking for permanent seat in UNSC, and it says these are all the conditions because of which UNSC permanent membership can be granted to India. There are countries called as G4 countries. These are requesting for UNSC reforms. India is one of them. These are the articles of part 2 of February. Thank you very much. All the very best.